Hi, I'm Timothy Brown. I'm the Education and Community Engagement Manager at the Hartford Symphony Orchestra, and I'm here tonight with Michelle Cann. Thank you so much for being here. I'm looking forward to our interview. And first of all, I just want to say what a phenomenal concert you gave at the Curtis Institute, performing the Florence Price Sonata, also the Chopin Ballad Number 3 in A flat major, and of course the Gershwin solo piano version of Rhapsody in Blue. Tell me a little bit to start out with, Michelle. How have you been doing during COVID, and how are you finding as a concert pianist an opportunity to still be getting your music out there?
Well, first of all, thanks so much for speaking with me, and thank you to you and the Hartford Symphony and everyone for supporting this most recent concert. It was really a lot of fun. Um, it was actually difficult when the quarantine had first started in the end of March. I think for really honestly, for all of us, we were a little bit naive as to exactly how serious this was and how long it was going to take for things to be safe. So when I had my first concert canceled, which was at the end of March, I just had a lot of, I think, optimism about concerts in the summer still happening, or even, I had a huge concert that I'm still a little disappointed about. It was actually going to be the Florence Price Concerto, which we'll be talking about, at Carnegie Hall. And I had, and that would have been my debut at Carnegie Hall, aside from playing that historic piece there. And that would have been the first time that concerto was performed in Carnegie Hall. So there was so much, there was so much around the excitement that was building up to that went away. And honestly, this story is not unique to me, in the sense that everywhere, performers of all kinds had, I'm sure, big milestones that were, needed to be canceled for the safety of all. So I think at first, um, if I'm being completely honest, I was depressed about it. I think many were, and so I think right at the beginning, I didn't necessarily want to put my music out there, if that makes any sense. I mean, I sort of just, for about a month, I hardly practiced. I talked to a lot of colleagues that were saying, they hardly touched their instruments for a little bit, because I think it was just so shocking. And it was kind of like you had these milestones, you had these goals that you were practicing towards, and then they were suddenly taken away. And none of us have ever been through anything like this. Sure, concerts get canceled, but all of your concerts. So, I think the shock, we all first had to get through that period. And then once that happened, and I think once everyone started to realize, hey, we're in this for the long haul, we've got to see this through. And, it's probably not going to be until next year until we can start to share with audiences in person again. So I think you get through the shock, and then you transition to, okay, so how am I going to get through this year, and how am I still going to be who I am? Basically, I'm a pianist, I'm a performer. How can I still express my identity in these times?
Mhm.
So, that's where that creativity and, what's turned into the concert that you just heard came to be. Myself and presenters and, your own symphony and everyone is now thinking about, okay, we're in this, so how do we navigate it, right? So at any rate, I've been fortunate. I mean, the concert that you just heard, again, I have you and many to thank that helped make it possible. And the Chamber Music Society of Detroit, Steve Wogeman, who runs it, was very innovative in starting this whole thing and collaborating with other organizations to present really great quality live concerts. I mean, because of his efforts, to begin with, Curtis Institute of Music opened their doors for me to come in, with the building being closed. They were able, I was able to safely do this with a recording engineer, go into the hall and record, different things and be able to do this live concert. So, that's the thing that's actually really exciting, was that the fact that they would allow me to come in and be able to have this concert present it to you at this quality, you know, that was just such a great, that was absolutely a great feeling. I have to say it was like a high for me. It felt as close to, you know, playing for a live audience as I've had in a while. So, you know, that's on, I think, the really higher end of, since the quarantine started, I'll say it's definitely the higher end of virtual achievements, you know, that I'm extremely happy about. I think on the other extreme, you know, I did done already about 2 concerts from my own music room at home, and which were also very nice. And the one thing that was really unique about that was that because I was just in my room, I was able to have those concerts, and in between when I would talk about the pieces,
Mhm.
unlike at Curtis, I didn't have a computer in front of me to see comments and sort of connect. In this case, because I was just in my, you know, room, I would interact with people that were talking to me in between pieces. So I could sort of see the comments in real time and say hello to people. So there was something really intimate about that, you know, you don't usually ever get. So yeah,
Right.
that was fun. It was unique. I have been very involved in a number of summer festivals. You know, again, everyone just came up with ways to connect outside of in person. So a lot of summer camps that usually would be in person are now virtual. So I'm currently teaching this week for the Curtis Institute of Music Summerfest camp. Which is very cool. I mean, right before you and I are talking this morning, I was teaching. I asked students from where they're from. One was in upstate, one was in Albany. We finished a lesson. One was in Westchester, not so far. Another one was all the way in LA. And tomorrow I'm teaching someone who's in China right now. So their lesson's going to be almost at midnight, literally, the time difference. I mean, more power to them. So again, something unique that, you know, you try to look at the positives when it's hard to find them, you know, when you're dealing with obviously so much negatives, you're dealing with a lot of, you know, hopelessness, right, during this year. And I think we all go through this. But when you look for what can, you know, what can we learn from this year, and things that we probably never did, but now maybe we'll do even when we can be back in person, it's exciting. And so, yeah, so virtually, I mean, now I'm teaching someone that's sitting in China. I'm connecting with more students and more people in countries in real time that, you know, you never really can do on a regular basis. So I don't know. I mean, I have to say I've gotten very used to it at this point. You know, it's been many months, but I've also found definitely a good amount of inspiration and happiness in the midst of all this. And especially because, you know, artists, I have to say, I mean, we're a resilient bunch, you know. You know, we love what we do, and you can't shut us up. You know, we're going to find a way to connect. And that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing it everywhere, and I'm happy to be part of that.
Oh, amazing. That's amazing. And we were so honored to be a part of your recent performance at the Curtis Institute. We'll talk about that in a minute. I want to go back really briefly, though. You mentioned, you know, that you were unable to perform in Carnegie Hall, and that would have been the first time that the Florence Price Concerto in One Movement had been performed in that hall, correct?
Absolutely.
Is there any plan to resurrect that concert in any way, or to make sure that that premiere and your debut still happens?
Well, if it's up to me, then the answer is yes, but it's not entirely up to me. I'll put it this way. The orchestra that I was supposed to play with, they've said they'll try. You know, unfortunately, that's kind of the answer a lot of us are getting for rescheduling of things. You know, it's nobody's promising things because they don't know what, you know, sometimes when you're planning seasons in advance, and of course Carnegie gets booked in advance for so many things, it's difficult for people to promise things. But I feel hopeful and positive that this will happen. It unfortunately wouldn't be in this, next season.
Sure.
Or, well, really the season that's coming up now, but hopefully in maybe 22, that will be a possibility. So, you know, I'm staying very positive that I'll still be part of the debut of the piece. And again, someone else might come in there and play the piece. You know, people are really getting excited, which is a good thing, and I'm happy about that. Of course, I would like to be part of the historic premiere, but if that's not meant to be, then it's not meant to be. And at any rate, being an advocate for music is what I care the most about. So, you know.
Amazing. I love
okay,
it.
if I'm the second person, then I'm the second person, right?
Right. Well, let's shift and talk a little bit about the recent recital you did with at the Curtis Institute, I should say. This wonderful program, as you said, run by the Chamber Music Society of Detroit. You had Florence Price on the program along with Chopin and Gershwin. Tell me about how you decided to put together these three composers.
So I guess sort of in a long story short, and I do talk about this a little bit at the end of the program, but the main pieces that I liked, you know, wanted to pair, I will say, were the Florence Price and the Gershwin. I put the Florence Price at the beginning of the program, the Gershwin ended the program. The reason for this was that both of those pieces were written near the same time, within the same decade. And in this decade is between 1924 or such to 1934. So within that decade. Now, the thing is, Gershwin had written the Rhapsody in Blue first. He wrote it in 1924. The Florence Price Concerto was written, the year isn't as specific in my mind right now, but about 1932, 33. And of course, Gershwin was very, very well known. Florence Price definitely knew him and knew his music. And I'm sure, you know, the Rhapsody in Blue sort of became very popular very fast. So that was something she was aware of. What is interesting to me, and why I put those two pieces on the same program, was the similarity in inspiration on some level. The thing is, during this period especially, there was such, I mean, a lot of people say like Dvorak came into America and basically brought out, you know, how African-American music had, you know, basically was part of the American music. So, you know, then you get all these composers, Copland and Gershwin and such others, who were using a lot of different styles that were attributed to African-American, you know, styles, and then brought them into the classical world. So that being said, that was like the thing to do. And Florence Price, now this is what I actually find really amazing. Gershwin does this, of course, very, very well in Rhapsody in Blue. It's more jazzy than anything else. But Florence Price, of course, is doing this too. And she's, you know, all these composers are doing it. But the thing about Florence Price is that it's almost as if she really makes it like her own form in a way. Like I think with some of the composers, you get the sense that it's put in there, but yet there's a very specific structure. I'm not saying Gershwin did that in Rhapsody in Blue because he didn't quite, but many composers did, where they took these influences, but there was like specific structure and you could tell it was like sort of a mix. Florence Price sort of had her own sound world. She almost made, I wish they could call it something else. It almost needs its own term because she had an amazing way of basically mixing sort of constantly throughout her music, African-American spirituals and dances and pretty much that sound with romanticism and, you know, of the classical, Western classical side. And it's just kind of all woven together in such a way that it's hard to separate the two, you know? So I thought, honestly, she was genius in how she did it. But here's the thing. Everyone knew about Gershwin and everyone knew about Rhapsody in Blue. But then here's Florence Price, who did an absolutely amazing job. I mean, arguably better than others, of mixing, you know, different styles together during a time when that was popular. But, you know, who knew about her? You know? And again, I say, you know, I was corrected. I was having a conversation with someone who was involved in this new biography that's out called Heart of a Woman. Wonderful book. I'm reading it now and recommend it to everyone. But this biography, as I'm reading it and talking to the editor, I realized that it's interesting. It wasn't so much that she wasn't known completely as no one knew about her. No, they knew about her during her time. They didn't care. You see? So in other words, she, you know, it was hard enough for Black classical musicians to be known. She
Right.
was known. She was in a mix of composers that like people knew about. She had some successes, but in terms of them really promoting her and pushing her so that the nation knew her or the world, what have you, that was something that wasn't happening, you know? And so she struggled because she didn't have that support.
Mhm.
And so when she died, she fell off. And that's why, you know, people like you and I, and many of us will say, I've never heard of her. Because
Right.
now we're decades later. Maybe if we were living in the 30s, 20s, 30s, then we might have said, oh, I think I've heard that name, or I did hear one piece by her. You see what I mean? But it's just that she was not given her due, the credit that she deserved, which would have put her into a timeless space where what she's talked about in history books. And, you know, no matter what, we know that name the same way we know Gershwin, you know,
Absolutely.
and that to me is a travesty. So anyway, that was a long-winded way of saying why I thought it mattered to have these two pieces in the program. And Chopin, it's just beautiful. I was looking for like a piece that was very romantic, but yet had an entirely different vibe, if you want to put it that way. And I just thought the third ballade would just be such a beautiful middle piece between those two big works.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And it is a wonderful program to our viewers. If you haven't checked it out, we've got it on HSO to go. Definitely give it a listen. You know, I'll be very honest with you. So I started piano at 6 years old, studied competitively all the way through high school and in college. Never heard of Florence Price. And in fact, to be honest with you, Michelle, hearing your concert the other night was the first time I'd ever even heard her sonata, the piano sonata. And so I was blown away. I especially love that third movement.
Yeah.
And you talk about the integration of different styles of gospel music, of jazz, you know, folk music, as well as the Western classical styles that she had learned. Obviously, I know she was a student at the New England Conservatory and so forth. But
Exactly.
it's an amazing piece. How were you first introduced to the music of Florence Price as a pianist?
So for me, that actually started in about 2016, not that long ago, really. And I was called to participate in a concert in New York City by an orchestra. Their name's The Dream Unfinished. They're an activist orchestra, actually. And they had a special program that highlighted women and Black women in general. And on one side, they talked about women that had gone through police brutality, but aren't talked about. You know, it's interesting because we can bring that right now into our present day situation with Breonna Taylor, right? That gets brought up a lot, that they talked about George Floyd, but why aren't we getting justice for Breonna Taylor? Why aren't we talking about that, right? That name comes up. So that's kind of the concept. It was that sometimes Black women who have gone through these things are not getting their due as much. I mean, it's all horrible, really, but they're not getting their due as much as men are. So at any rate, that was the theme. So they had one side with that story, and the other side was music. And with music, it was with female Black composers and Black performers. So basically, they were ready to have this Florence Price concerto played that I'd never heard of, and someone recommended myself to be the soloist. So when they called me and asked me about this piece, I asked them to send me the music. I actually doubted at the time whether or not it would be a piece I wanted to play. I didn't say yes right away because I thought, well, if I've never heard of this, it might not be a great piece. Like, that's why I never heard of it. And so I didn't want to just agree. And I remember getting the music and sight reading it and looking through, and I was floored. I was just floored. I mean, what a piece. What a piece. Beauty and energy and excitement. And that, like, that's what really sparked the fire in me. You know, I think it made me wonder and curious. I was very curious about this composer, if something so beautiful and so great could be completely unknown to me my entire life up to this point. So I thought, well, what else has she done, you know? And of course, since then, I found so much more amazing music. So the story to that piece is very interesting too. Apparently, when she died, a lot of her music that hadn't been published per se was left in her attic, and that home had been abandoned. And I think her children had probably done the best they could to preserve what they could, but some of this music had been left there. And so only in this last decade, people who were looking to buy the home saw all these boxes of music, and in it was this concerto. And so, and there's many more things that they've sort of put together now. So yeah, I mean, this is the story. I mean, she died in 1953. So we're talking about the end of the 50s into 2000s. So, you know, from there, when I perform this piece, I have been advocating for this piece to be, you know, I play it as much as I can. It's so excited to play it with your symphony, and I think it deserves to be heard.
Absolutely. Well, we're so excited to have you in January perform it with the HSO. I want to drill down a little bit into something you're talking about in terms of the scholarship and learning more about Florence Price and her music. You mentioned this new biography that's just come out, written by Ray Linda Brown, I believe,
Yes.
is the name of the author, who I read was a Hartford native, and so there's actually a local connection there. But
okay.
yeah, so but in terms of the music itself, you've shared with me a little bit about how there's new scholarship that's come out about the concerto itself, and helping us to get a better sense of the original version that Miss Price wrote. You know, tell us a little bit more about that recent discovery and how that's maybe affecting the way that music is interpreted.
So the interesting thing was that the first thing that I realized was that Ray Linda Brown and some others had pieces of the concerto, and they were missing the manuscript of, you know, at least the orchestral reduction. They needed a little bit more in order to make it playable again. And this was before they'd found the music in the attic. Then they found that, and they were able to, Trevor Weston put together a version, you know, and that was based on 2 piano parts, you know, one, of course, was the orchestral reduction, and one was the main pianist. So they had that copy, and that had like little notes in it and enough information for, you know, like saying, oh, this is what the trumpets play and this, that, and the other. They had a couple, again, spare parts, enough information to put together the version that I played. Then the discovery of the grandchildren, which was the first initial discovery, which is having found the descendants and then being able to set up rights to her music through Schirmer. So they took control of, you know, most of her music and still putting things together. Then I think through the same grandchild, they were able to find the actual orchestral manuscript with like the full orchestral score. And that was just this year. So the truth is, I actually received that music and I looked, and I do see some differences, of course, in instrumentation. It's a curiosity to me because now I've never played this more newly found version, and I'm curious as to how different it may be, you know. But this is just something that's actually quite exciting. But it's also translates to a lot of other pieces that she wrote that either, you know, it gives you hope, because they found this, and this year they find the real manuscript. You know, there's more piano concertos she wrote that we don't have any music for, that I hope will be found. You know, I would love to see these other concertos. They only have this one, you know, and this goes for many other things.
So as a concert pianist, are there other African-American composers that you like to perform and that you feel like are underrepresented in the canon of American music?
Well, there are, and there's probably many that I don't know, you know, that I'm still finding out about, you know. One, I can give you some names. You know, One other name was a pupil of Florence Price. Her name was Margaret Bonds. And the interesting thing was that was a name I had heard before. Not I didn't know too many things by her, but I'd actually heard of her before I'd heard of Florence Price. She was a talented pianist and composer too that studied with Florence Price, and they were very close. But she has some wonderful piano pieces, solos, really great piano solos and pieces written for piano and voice. And, there's a lot in her canon that I think is worth checking out. Another one was, who only recently sort of died, George Walker. And he was a great composer. He wrote really some great piano sonatas. He was the first literally the first Black musician to be accepted into the Curtis Institute of Music, which is interesting. And he was there for composition in piano. And actually, I feel a certain connection to him and him coming into Curtis, because believe it or not, I am the second Black woman to be in the piano department, have been accepted to Curtis since it opened. And that is very telling to me also, on the side of the changes that we need to be making, there's been men since then, but women, no. And so, I feel like I carry a certain torch, and I have a lot of interest, again, in promoting Black composers, and especially Black female composers who were pianists like myself, because this is inspiration for young children and for young Black girls and boys who will see, mentors in a field that, sometimes you're not interested in going into a field if you don't see anyone that looks like you doing it, so it's important to see that. Yeah. So, it really matters to me, but those are some names. Another one is actually a living composer right now who I really enjoy is Valerie Coleman. And she was part of the Imani Winds, which is a diverse group. I think they're all Black actually right now. But they're a wind ensemble. They're so awesome. She's no longer in it. She's a flute player. She actually was so busy with her writing and composing that she's left the group. I know that she's done a residency with the Philadelphia Orchestra now. She's actually doing very well for herself, well deserved. She is very talented, and she's someone I would definitely look into. Written things for orchestra and for piano and other instruments. And I just absolutely love her writing.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, yeah, and absolutely to your point, we know that representation is so important, both in terms of the concert rep that people hear, and also in terms of the artists who are performing those works. And you're such a role model for so many, and we are so excited to have you with us at the HSO in January, performing the Florence Price Concerto in One Movement. Any last words, Michelle, about Florence Price, or how can also people stay in touch and follow you even virtually?
Well, I guess my only last words about Florence Price is, listen to more of her music and and be inspired by her great writing, and and let that be a torch for yourselves to look and search for other composers, living or not, who might not get noticed and deserve to be. I just think that it's a testament to that. And in terms of staying connected with me, best way to do that is, I guess, two ways. I have through my Facebook fan page. If you follow me and like me, Michelle Cann, pianist, you can see what I'm up to virtually. I usually always share whatever concerts I may or may be doing over the year, or interesting things on that platform. Also through my YouTube page, which you can find through Michelle Cann, and when new videos are up. And if you want to send me a message, I always love that. You can just go to my website, michellecann.com, and send me a message. So yeah, I would love to hear from you. And if you have any other questions about Florence Price or what I'm up to, connect with me.
That's great. That's great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us and talk about your work, and also about Florence Price. And for those of you, again, who are listening to this interview and you haven't seen Michelle's concert from the Curtis Institute, please check that out on HSO To Go as well. So thanks so much.
Thank you.